Beginning in 1973 on Skull Island, an older Bill Randa, John Goodman, races through the jungle, running away from a terrifying, gigantic spider. Bill finds himself trapped at a cliff's edge. He throws a mysterious package into the sea, ready to meet his unfortunate end. Bill is saved, though, by the sudden appearance of a giant crab-like creature, which attacks the spider. These two creatures fight one another as Bill makes his escape. The creatures end up in the sea, along with Bill's mysterious package. This package is next seen in 2013. A fisherman finds the bag in his net in the Sea of Japan, but that will not be the last time we see this enigmatic object. The rest of the opener is split between a 1959 storyline and one set in 2015. The 1959 timeline centers on a young Lee Shaw, Wyatt Russell, a young Billy Randa, Anders Holm, and Billy's girlfriend Keiko, Mari Yamamoto. They are on the hunt for new creatures in Kazakhstan. The trio breaks into a restricted area as the Geiger counter goes off the charts. They are confronted by a boy soldier who believes that the radiation levels are just a fairy tale. Funnily enough, the readings drop to 0 as they get nearer to an abandoned site. The contamination may have been a ruse after all. What do the scientists find in Kazakhstan? At the site, the trio perform tests, using explosives to disturb the ground around them. These explosions cause the earth to break apart, though, and the structures surrounding them start to crack also. Further investigations lead them into another abandoned building, where they find a collection of glowing larvae. Billy and Keiko want to take samples of the creature's genetic material. They could very well have discovered new species. Lee is very much against this plan, though, worrying that the creature's mother will return at any moment. Billy lowers Keiko into the nursery regardless. Lee is then forced to follow. In the 2015 timeline, we follow Kate, Anna Sawai, to Tokyo. She is there to settle her father's affairs after his death. She uses his keys to enter an apartment, but inside she finds his other family. It seems that Kate's father, Hiroshi, had 2 separate families and 2 separate wives, one in America and one in Japan. Kate argues with Hiroshi's other wife and their son, Kentaro. It's an awkward first encounter, as they both believe that the other is the second family. Kate is overwhelmed by the situation and flees. In the streets, she hears sirens blaring. An emergency warning system has been activated. The alarms cause the citizens to run and flee, knocking Kate over in the process. She is rescued by Kentaro and his mother. They take her to the evacuation area, where the people wait, hiding from a possible Godzilla attack. When did Kate first encounter Godzilla? This drill triggers traumatic flashbacks for Kate, who has already lived through one Godzilla attack. She was at G-Day in San Francisco when Godzilla attacked for the first time. In the 2014 film, Godzilla. Kate was on a school bus with her students when Godzilla tore through the Golden Gate Bridge. She managed to save some of her students, but most of them were lost in the carnage. Back in 2015, Kentaro's mother comforts Kate. Once the emergency alert has been canceled, they return to the ground level. Kentaro shows Kate around Hiroshi's office. There they find a hidden safe. Kate cracks the code and finds Randa's mysterious bag inside the safe. With Kentaro's ex-girlfriend May's, Kiersey Clemens' help, they are able to unlock the data stored on the 70s reels found within the bag. The reels contain files from a sinister company called Monarch. By opening this data, May has unwittingly alerted the mysterious company to their current whereabouts. One of the photographs found on the reels is of Keiko standing inside one of Godzilla's gigantic footprints. Kate recognizes Keiko right away, stating that it is her grandmother. The opening episode then ends with Keiko back in 1959. Keiko and Lee are lowered into the creature's lair. They inspect the insectoid larvae. An earthquake then awakens these creatures, which all start to hatch immediately. They are then pursued by the creatures. Lee manages to escape, but Keiko is dragged back down by the army of insects. It is heavily implied that Keiko then meets her horrifying end, killed by the swarm of creatures. We return to 1952 in the Philippines. Lieutenant Lee Shaw is assigned a new mission, to be the security escort for a Japanese scientist. Lee is shocked to discover that Dr. Miura is a female, and Dr. Miura is Keiko from the previous episode. This works as the introduction of Lee and Keiko to one another. Obviously, in 7 years' time, they are much closer, but things get off to a bumpy start. Keiko is investigating irregular radiation levels in the Philippines, and Lee has been tasked with keeping her safe, although Keiko is quite the wild card herself, driving recklessly through the jungle. Whilst running tests, Lee and Keiko are introduced to Billy Randa, wandering through the jungle. He is a cryptozoologist who studies mythical creatures. It would appear that they are all hunting for the same thing. Why do Lee Shaw and Keiko fall out? Billy talks about the local fairy tale of dragons in the area. Keiko proposes that Billy join their expedition, but Lee is fiercely opposed. Lee and Keiko argue over this stranger. Their argument ends with Lee being dismissed. He drives off in Keiko's Jeep, leaving them stranded in the jungle. Meanwhile, in 2015, Kentaro visits his father's office once more. Still Still angered by his dad's lies, Kentaro proceeds to wreck the joint. This leads to the discovery of a locked filing cabinet and more mysterious files. These contain information about Lee Shaw, who is living in a retirement community in Tokyo in the present. Kate decides to return home after discovering her father's secrets. At the airport, she is accosted by Tim, Joe Tippett, from Monarch. Tim wants the files Kate has accessed. Kate runs from Tim but is soon captured by his assistant Duval, Elisa Lasowski. Tim places a bag over Kate's head and she immediately starts to panic. A tussle follows, leading to a car crash. Fearing for her life, Kate rushes over to the local police station. She reports this attempted abduction, but the police don't seem to be that interested. Paranoid, Kate flees once again. She heads to May's apartment, yet Tim and Duval have beaten her there. May and Kate escape together. Kentaro returns from his father's office, intrigued by this Lee Shaw character. His mother says that Hiroshi's father died when he was 18, and Uncle Lee was his only remaining family. Their conversation is interrupted, though, by Tim and Duval's sudden appearance. They demand the files once more. While his mother distracts the enemy, Kentaro escapes the building. He reunites with May and Kate, who are terrified by Monarch's relentless pursuit. May suggests that they buy some fake passports and flee the country, but Kentaro wants to follow his latest lead. They head to Lee's retirement home instead. Kate, Kentaro, and May find a much older Lee Shaw, Kurt Russell, at this retirement community in Tokyo. He recognizes Hiroshi's son, although he was unaware that Hiroshi had a daughter. Lee guides them outside, away from the cameras, so that they can talk in private. Lee is updated on Hiroshi's mysterious death and Bill Randa's files. While they chat, May discovers a hidden camera in a nearby tree. Lee admits that this retirement home is his prison. He is tagged and monitored by Monarch at all times. Lee suggests that they get out of here pronto. To show he means business, Lee removes his ankle tag. Back in 1952, Keiko and Billy get better acquainted. Billy discusses mutos, massive unidentified terrestrial organisms, and how he has been tracing strange light patterns in the sky in the Philippines. These patterns match with Keiko's research. She has been tracking the radiation readings too. What do Keiko and Billy find in the Philippines? They follow their joint map, which leads them to a clearing. Here they find the shipwreck of the USS Lawton. This very ship was brought down at Pearl Harbor 9 years ago. Somehow it has traveled over 5,000 miles to this jungle clearing. Billy admits that he was the only survivor of that attack. He was actually on this ship when it went down all those years ago. Billy and Keiko explore inside the ship. They find strange organic material dripping down the ship's walls, and then a pile of dead bodies covered in this same goo. Freaked out by their discoveries, the scientists flee. As they are leaving, they are attacked by an unknown creature. The creature claws at the ship. Billy is soon trapped under the wreckage. Keiko tries to free Billy, but she struggles to remove the metal structure that is pinning him down. Lee then reappears, just in time to save the day. Lee and Keiko work together to free Billy as the gigantic creature continues its attack. The trio escapes and runs from the creature, which makes its presence known. It is revealed to be a giant winged beast, possibly Rodan. This is the dragon that the locals have been talking about for decades now. We return to 2015 timeline. A much older Lee Shaw plans his escape from Monarch with Kentaro, Kate, and May's help. They are currently trapped within Monarch's retirement home in Tokyo, and their every move is being monitored. Lee suggests that they investigate Hiroshi's crash site in Alaska for starters. They casually make their way to the car park, but are soon chased by Monarch security guards. Lee takes control of Kentaro's rental car and drives towards the exit. They are forced to take a detour, though, and escape from the facility in true action-packed style. This is another rip-roaring opening sequence from the series. As the foursome plan their next move, May admits that she has digitized all of Billy Randa's files. Lee suggests that they look through these files for anything related to Alaska. He then confesses that Hiroshi worked for Monarch. Kate is angered by the fact that Lee and her father didn't warn the general public about these gigantic creatures, but Lee insists that they tried their best to stop all this chaos from ever happening. Meanwhile, the 50s timeline jumps forward 2 years to 1954. Lee is now working alongside Keiko and Billy. They meet with General Puckett, hoping to acquire funding from the U.S. Army. Their little project seems to be growing bigger every day. They show the general an enormous monster footprint impression. The general is blown away by their discoveries and agrees to fund them immediately. Lee, Keiko, and Billy quickly realize what the support of the U.S. Army actually looks like. The Army plans to lure Godzilla out of the sea and into the open, where they aim to kill the creature by detonating a nuclear bomb in its vicinity. At Bikini Atoll, this plan is put into place. The Army's strategy works perfectly. Godzilla makes its cinematic entrance, exiting the waters and heading straight for the bomb. This breathtaking piece of SFX work really captures the blockbuster enormity of the creature. Keiko tries to stop the attack but is intercepted by Lee. Godzilla takes the bait and the bomb is detonated. What is the outcome of the operation? Keiko worries about the military's reckless plans and is frustrated that Lee chose to stop her from saving the creature. The operation was a success though, and the Army agreed to increase the trio's funding. They are handed a blank check to continue their research into mutos. After the issues in Bikini Atoll, Keiko asks if they can keep some of their secret secrets from the general moving forward. Lee agrees to only tell the general what he himself has been told. They set up a deal to keep the general in the dark on all future projects. Returning to 2015, Lee and the gang take a boat to South Korea. Lee wants to meet with an old friend in Pohang. The others still don't trust Lee though, and Kentaro confronts the colonel on the boat's deck. Lee persuades Kentaro to ditch the files and to trust in his plan. Kentaro eventually submits, throwing the files into the sea. How does Lee Shaw and the gang get to Alaska? In Pohang, Lee and the others are questioned by customs. Lee's old friend helps them escape and leads them to his hidden plane. They aim to fly from Korea to Alaska without the need for passports or further interrogations. May finds some coordinates on Billy's files whilst on the route, and the gang heads towards this location. They land in the snowy mountains of Alaska, where they find the wreckage of Hiroshi's plane. To all their surprise, they find a tent as well, which has clearly been lived in very recently. They believe that Hiroshi could still be alive. Kate recognizes his handwriting on documents and his pencil sharpenings on the side. He must have survived the crash. Whilst investigating the crash site, Lee's Korean friend discovers giant claw marks on the side of Hiroshi's plane. It appears that they landed successfully, but were then attacked afterwards by a giant creature. Panicked, the Korean restarts his plane's engines, ready to escape this trap without delay. The earth begins to shake, and another giant creature attacks. This particular creature seems to be able to freeze objects and people with its breath. The creature unleashes its powers on the Korean and his plane, freezing them instantly. How will the rest of the gang escape this seemingly doomed situation? We return to Utah in 2015. Dr. Barnes has discovered strange readings and updates her Monarch team in Virginia of her findings. There has been a radiation spike in Alaska, one that mirrors the data recorded just before the G-Day attack. These readings must surely be linked with the ice monster in Alaska. The series then returns to Kate's storyline, back in that snowy landscape. The ice monster destroys their plane and then heads straight for them. Kentaro distracts the monster with a flare gun, buying them enough time to escape to a nearby cave. The gang are safe here, but May slips and accidentally soaks her legs in ice-cold water. She worries that this will lead to her imminent death. Without food or shelter and with May's delirium setting in, the gang must decide where to head next. Kentaro wants to head towards a base he saw from the sky, but Lee would prefer traveling to the coast instead. The gang disagree and split up. Kentaro goes it alone, heading towards the base. These scenes are intercut with flashback sequences, reverting back to the previous year. They focus on Kentaro and May's relationship in Tokyo, 2014. Kentaro was launching his own art show at the time and happened to stumble into May out in the street. This odd meet-cute quickly escalates as Kentaro ditches his art show, taking May to a secret whiskey bar and then back to his art studio apartment. They flirt with one another at the studio and end up getting more intimate with each other. Eventually, Kentaro agrees to make an appearance at his own art show's opening. He leaves May at his studio after exchanging phone numbers. Back in the present timeline, Kentaro hears strange noises and then collapses out in the wilderness. Meanwhile, Kate, May, and Lee find themselves literally going round in circles back at Hiroshi's campsite. May is wrapped up inside the tent and a fire is made. Lee burns Hiroshi's documents to keep them all warm. What does Lee discover about the Ice Titan? It isn't long before the monster returns though, devouring the campsite and absorbing the fire's heat in one fell swoop. The trio escape unharmed as the monster departs once again. Lee realizes in that moment that the monster was feeding on the fire and the plane's engines. It was drawn to the heat, not to the humans. Lee decides to distract the monster by creating a large bonfire. While the monster is feeding on this fire, the gang plan to escape once and for all. May fears that she won't make it out alive though, and orders Kate to leave her there to die. Kate refuses to leave May behind though. At the same time, Kentaro wakes from his slumber in the icy wilderness. He sees visions of his father and follows Hiroshi's trail to an abandoned base. Inside this structure, Kentaro finds his father's pencil shavings and a phone dangling off its hook. Kentaro has further hallucinations as his past and present blur into one. In these visions, his father congratulates him on his art show. How does the gang escape from the Ice Titan? Back at the crash site, Lee sets his trap. The monster re-emerges before Lee is finished setting up though, startling the team. Kate and May run away from the monster as a helicopter circles overhead. Lee seizes his opportunity, setting off his explosive bonfire distraction. The Titan falls for the trap and feasts on the flames. At the same time, Kentaro wakes from his slumber in the icy wilderness. He sees visions of his father and follows Hiroshi's trail to an abandoned base. Inside this structure, Kentaro finds his father's pencil shavings and a phone dangling off its hook. Kentaro has further hallucinations as his past and present blur into one. In these visions, his father congratulates him on his art show. How does the gang escape from the Ice Titan? Back at the crash site, Lee sets his trap. The monster re-emerges before Lee is finished setting up though, startling the team. Kate and May run away from the monster as a helicopter circles overhead. Lee seizes his opportunity, setting off his explosive bonfire distraction. The Titan falls for the trap and feasts on the flames. The episode ends with the 4 survivors flying back to safety in this helicopter. On the way home, Kate thanks Kentaro for saving their lives. Kentaro mentions finding pencil shavings at the abandoned base. case. He believes that his father, Hiroshi, is still alive. The plane then lands back in civilization, and they are greeted by the Monarch bad guy, Tim. We return to Alaska at the Monarch command post. Tim and his team have captured the 4 runaways and interrogate them one by one, separately. The gang has been split up and imprisoned at the post. Tim and Duval want to know what is going on and what information they are missing. The 4 captives handle the confinement differently. Kate talks aloud to herself, saying that she isn't intimidated, whilst Kentaro is visibly violent and aggressive in his prison cell. Meanwhile, May, who is still recovering from the Alaskan debacle, is questioned by Duval. The Monarch employee offers her a way out, passing May her contact details. Who is Verdugo? Tim soon realizes that these 3 prisoners don't actually know anything of any worth. He decides to free them straight away. Although Monarch's deputy director Verdugo still wants to question Colonel Lee Shaw in private, the trio are released. Tim hands them new passports and plane tickets home, courtesy of Monarch. He apologizes for the misunderstanding, but reiterates that he will not be able to help them the next time this happens. May decides to head back to Tokyo, but Kate has other ideas. Kate wants to continue the hunt for Hiroshi, her father. She suggests that they raid his office in San Francisco instead. Kentaro and May eventually agree with Kate's plans. The trio then journey to the States. As they land, viewers are shown the wreckage of the old city. This place is still haunted by that cataclysmic event, although the city is slowly rebuilding. At the same time, Lee is interrogated by Verdugo. They argue about the legitimacy of Monarch. Lee thinks the business is outdated and redundant, stating that they had 60 years to plan for G-Day and still failed. Duval watches the interrogation unfolding. She clearly doesn't trust this former employee. Back in America, the trio is picked up by James, Kate's mom's friend. They drive to Kate's mom's home. Caroline greets them there. Kate wastes no time at all in updating Caroline on her heartbreaking discovery. Hiroshi had a second family in Japan. Caroline tries to ignore this truth, but is overwhelmed by the unfolding situation. Why was Kate really sent to Tokyo? Kate and Caroline argue about Hiroshi's lies. Kate questions Caroline's actions, realizing that she was sent to Tokyo to find out the truth on her own. Caroline knew her husband was having an affair, but she was too cowardly to question it. Kate had to find out for herself. The trip was just Caroline's way of gaining that information without personally being involved. In response, Caroline admits that she wanted Kate to get out of her depression. It was an excuse to get Kate out of the house, back into the real world. Kate was still reeling from the trauma of G-Day, where she lost her students in a truly horrific fashion. After their argument, Kate asks her mother for help getting into the restricted red zone in San Francisco. Caroline and James drive the trio into the ruins of the city, paying off the guards along the way. The mother promises to pick them up the following morning. She reminds them that intruders are shot, they must be careful and not get caught. What happened to Kate just before G-Day? The trio head through the wreckage of San Francisco under the cover of darkness. Buildings crumble and collapse around them. They head towards Hiroshi's office regardless. The familiar surroundings trigger traumatic memories for Kate, who relives the events leading up to G-Day. It's revealed that Kate had a girlfriend and they planned on moving in together, although Kate cheated on her girlfriend the very next day. Whilst in the red zone, the trio are chased by soldiers surveying the area. They hide from the guards as Kate undergoes further flashbacks. It is then revealed that Kate and her girlfriend practically split up only moments before the Godzilla attack. Kate concludes in the present that she is no better than her father. She abandoned the people closest to her as well. May tries to comfort her, reminding her friend of her bravery in Alaska. The trio arrives at Hiroshi's office. There is no hidden safe this time around, but Hiroshi's map on his office wall offers fresh clues instead. They wrap up the poster and head back to the rendezvous point. The trio reunites with Caroline and escapes the red zone unseen. Kate discusses Hiroshi's lies with her mother once again. They maturely debate the situation this time though. Caroline admits that she knew Hiroshi was cheating on her, but she chose to ignore the fact. The mother states that Kate deserved better, hurt that her daughter was messed up by her father's absence. Kate tells her mom that Hiroshi is still alive and that he was working for a secret organization. She declares that she is going to find him no matter what. The episode ends with May phoning Duval. She wants to go home and is willing to negotiate terms with her enemy to escape all of this mess. This is May's way out. We return to 1955. We pick up with Captain Lee Shaw and Dr. Keiko Mura at the military's annual summer ball. The duo plan to thank their funders and keep a low profile, but General Puckett wants to show off his latest project to the other bigwigs. Keiko worries that the military is going to kill off all of the Titans. Lee hopes that Keiko can change their minds. After some rather awkward introductions, Lee and Keiko start to flirt with one another and dance in front of all their colleagues. They share an intimate moment and agree to take things further back at their hotel suite, but Bill interrupts their flirtations with an emergency emergency call. He has pinpointed their next Titan. What has Dr. Suzuki created? This will take them to Japan. Lee is forced to stay behind, though, needed for an important budgetary meeting instead. Keiko and Bill decide to head towards danger without him. They meet with Dr. Suzuki, who has created a device that can lure the Titans out of the shadows. They sit and wait for the device to ensnare its first victim. Meanwhile, back in the States, Lee worries about Keiko's safety. He asks General Puckett if he can go to Japan, ignoring his own duties. Puckett makes it clear if Lee defies orders, then he will be putting his job title at risk. Lee defies orders anyway, and heads to Japan's Monster Island. The bait is set, and the scientists nervously wait for a Titan to show up. Lee arrives just before the party has properly started, having defied orders to be with Keiko instead. Keiko is upset that Lee would be blinded by his emotions in such a way. She wants them to put the world's safety before their own desires. This doesn't stop them from kissing, though. Lee would rather take the risk, and Keiko is easily swayed as well. As they are kissing, the device stops beeping. They turn to see the machine being thrown into the air. It nearly hits them as it is effortlessly tossed across the waters. Then Godzilla makes his cinematic entrance, emerging from the waters. Bill and Suzuki are lucky enough to witness this terrifying creature in all its splendor. The bait has worked and a Titan has emerged. Although this proves that Godzilla is still alive, the military didn't kill it as first assumed. The creature then disappears, heading away from civilization once again. The trio returns from Japan. Lee wants to tell General Puckett about the re-emergence of Godzilla, but Keiko is adamantly against this proposal. She fears that they will create bigger bombs to kill the beast. As they enter Monarch headquarters, they discover a new commander in charge. Lee has been replaced and demoted after his unauthorized absence. In the 2015 storyline, Duvall frees a much older Lee Shaw. She doesn't have any faith in Monarch anymore and wants to aid Lee in his mission instead. They head to San Francisco and reunite with Kate, May, and Kentaro. Lee warns them that another G-Day is coming, although this one could be far worse than the last, and they need to act fast. The team follows Hiroshi's coordinates and travels to Africa. Kate is concerned by Lee's plans to continually involve ex-Monarch employees. She struggles to trust his tactics and argues the point in front of the team. May convinces her to stay, though. Is Hiroshi Randa alive? They head through the desert and find Hiroshi, alive and well. Kate and Kentaro wave to their father across the landscape, and it looks like he is waving back, but this feel-good moment soon turns to absolute dread. Hiroshi isn't waving. He is warning them, pleading with them to stay away, to run. Hiroshi packs up and drives away immediately. Then a chopper appears overhead. Tim and his Monarch gang have tracked them down. The ground starts to shake and Godzilla emerges from beneath, causing an avalanche on the mountainside. Godzilla rises from under the ground. It then stares straight at Kate before departing. The chopper gets too close to Godzilla as it marches away, though, and spirals out of control, crashing toward the ground. After Godzilla's latest attack, the team is left conflicted. Lee and Duvall want to pursue the creature, to see where it is heading, to even help it. Kate, May, and Kentaro aren't interested in following the Titan, though, and want to search for Hiroshi instead. This is where the team part ways. As the younger trio heads back towards civilization, May confesses to her secrets. She tells Kate that she sold them out, telling Monarch of their exact location. May explains that she was on the run and hid in Tokyo with a fake alias. Monarch found out her secrets and exploited them. She was forced to help them to be given the chance to return to her own family and home. Kate is hurt by this betrayal, declining May's offers of help and even extra money to fund their ongoing expedition. Kate turns and storms off away from May. We return to Algeria. Tim wakes at the helicopter crash site, discovering that he is the only survivor from his team. He heads back to the airport, where he bumps into Kate and Kentaro. May has bought them all tickets home, but things are still awkward between the trio. May goes to the toilets to clear her head and ends up being abducted by her former employers along the way. Kate searches the airport for her friend and finds May's belongings abandoned in the toilets. Knowing May wouldn't just leave without her passport and phone, Kate suspects the worst. What is Hiroshi's plan? She believes that Monarch has taken her hostage. Kate challenges Tim right away in the airport foyer. Tim denies the accusations and discusses his time working with Hiroshi instead, building up some kind of trust between the rivals. Tim believes that Hiroshi may be trying to prevent another G-Day from happening. Kate asks Tim, on behalf of Monarch, to help them find May. In return, she promises to help them find Lee Shaw, who has gone rogue. Kentaro still doesn't trust Tim or Monarch and isn't that bothered about finding Hiroshi any longer either. Kate urges him to keep fighting, though, to help her find May. Tim phones Verdugo, telling her about the Godzilla attack. Verdugo wants a debriefing, but Tim thinks he's just wasting his time. After arguing back, he is suspended for his insolence. Tim informs Verdugo that he is going to help the kids find May no matter what. Meanwhile, at Outpost 88 in Alaska, Lee and Duvall take over one of Monarch's bases. Dr. Barnes sees this act of terrorism taking place and runs and hides. She phones Verdugo, updating her boss on the unraveling situation. Lee and Duvall start to stockpile the base's explosives in the meantime. To track down May, Kate suggests starting with May's sister. They use her her phone to find May's home address. She lives in Washington. They travel to her home and meet with her family. They're told that May hasn't been home in 2 years, but keeps in contact now and then still. May's sister speaks with the gang in private afterward. She tells them that May was in trouble with her old company, AET, which stands for Applied Experimental Technologies. Flashbacks explore more of May's time with the company and what led her to run away to Tokyo in the first place. 3 years earlier, May was headhunted and recruited as a programmer at AET. She was a skilled worker, but felt that she wasn't been treated fairly at the company. In retaliation, May hacked the company's system. She discovered that they were testing on animals in an inhumane manner. She wiped all their data and hard work in response. The system crashed and May became the lead suspect. Scared for her safety, she fled. This is why she ran away to Tokyo and changed her identity. In the present, May is taken back to AET headquarters in Washington. Her boss, Brenda Holland, interrogates her about the system crash. At the very same time, Tim, Kate, and Kentaro track down May to this very building. To gain access unnoticed, Tim sets off a Titan alert system, which scares the locals, creating pandemonium on the streets. Brenda doesn't fall for Tim's tricks, though. She knows that they are here to save May. Brenda reiterates how May has destroyed important work. She is willing to make a deal with her, though, to wipe the slate clean. May will receive a fresh start if she reports back to Brenda everything that she learns about the Titans. May refuses to be her spy. What is May's real name? May is then reunited with Kate and Kentaro. She tells them that her real name is Cora. May no longer wants to live a lie, so she uses tough love instead, telling Kate to leave her alone. Kate, Kentaro, and Tim exit the building without their friend, where they are instantly kidnapped once again. It's only Verdugo, though. They are safe. Verdugo needs their help tackling Lee Shaw, who has gone rogue. Kate offers to help Monarch if they can save May in return. Verdugo accepts the terms and grants May her freedom. May is able to go back home to be with her family once more. The episode ends with a handful of short scenes. May returns to Kate and Kentaro after a brief family reunion. She is seen holding hands with Kate. Is this just friendship or something more? Verdugo takes Tim's advice and goes public with Monarch and the Mutos. Brenda is seen having a phone conversation with Walter Simmons. It would seem AET is working with Apex Cybernetics, who are prominent in Godzilla vs. Kong. Then, in Alaska, Lee Shaw sets off his explosives directly into the Alaskan Rift. This awakens the Ice Titan. The explosives turn the rift into a swirling vortex that then implodes on itself. Lee and Duval fly to a safe distance from the void and then look back at the rift, which has now been completely destroyed. We return to 2015 timeline. Lee Shaw takes his new team of soldiers to Kazakhstan. He's got unfinished business there after his lover Keiko was killed in an abandoned base, consumed by a swarm of Titan creatures back in the 50s. Lee is clearly out for revenge now in the present day. Adjacent to this storyline, we pick up with Kate and the gang at Monarch HQ. Tim needs their help tracking down Lee, who seems to have transformed into the villain of the piece now. He shows them around the base, pointing out the spikes and gamma rays at numerous sites across the globe on their fancy map. Why does Monarch need to stop Lee Shaw? Verdugo updates them on Lee's latest antics. Lee has detonated explosives in Alaska, which have caused that rift's gamma ray emissions to drop to zero, but then they have increased at every other site instead. This seems to be leading to another G-Day type scenario. They need to predict where Lee is heading next, to stop him from causing any more catastrophes to occur. Kate finds information about Keiko's death in Kazakhstan in Monarch's mountains of paperwork. They believe that Lee is heading to this very place next, due to sentimental reasons. Tim thinks Lee wants to rewrite the past. Verdugo is apprehensive about letting Kate and her friends go, but she eventually allows the mission to go ahead. Meanwhile, in the 50s, Lee, Keiko, and Bill are finding their new boss at Monarch to be intolerable. He's not impressed with their research or findings, wanting some solid proof or evidence in return for all the money the military has spent on them. To make matters worse, the boss demeans Keiko in front of her friends. Bill nearly attacks his boss, angered by his unprofessional words towards Keiko. The trio contemplates their next move. Lee suggests making a map that pinpoints the potential locations of all the Titans in the world. They only have 3 days to make a case for their organization. They need to prove that Monarch is still viable and important to the world's safety. Keiko and Bill work on the map together. The couple start to flirt with each other and get rather close in a short period. The next day, Bill has a brainwave and heads over to Keiko's house to tell her the good news in person. Here, he makes a surprising discovery. Is Bill the father of Hiroshi? Bill proposes that the Titans are hiding underground and may even be living in another realm. While Keiko is mulling over this crazy theory, she reveals her greatest secret. Keiko has a child from a previous marriage, and the boy is now living with her in the States. Keiko introduces Bill to Hiroshi, her son. This explains that Hiroshi isn't Bill's child after all, although it was inferred. Bill offers to support Keiko with her child as she is now widowed. The couple hold hands. The 50s subplot concludes with Lee's important meeting. He speaks with General Puckett before making his pitch to his new boss. Lee states that the new boss is being biased and ignoring all of the information. He adds that Godzilla is still alive, they did not kill it. Back in the 2015 narrative, Kate and her team travel to Kazakhstan. They enter the abandoned building and begin to hunt for Lee. On the way, they find piles of shells from the creatures that killed Keiko all those years ago. Kate concludes that the creatures are growing, shedding their skin as they develop. They soon discover a tunnel in the very center of the building, in the spot where Keiko was originally killed. The tunnel leads directly downwards. The team then finds Lee's explosives, dotted around the city. Duval then appears with her own team, holding them at gunpoint. What is Lee Shaw's plans with the explosives? Lee arrives afterward, asking to speak with Kate in private. He informs Kate about Bill's theory. He also believes that there is an entire world underground, a new realm deep down that humans cannot see. Lee states that Godzilla isn't here to harm them. Lee wants to seal off their world, closing every one of their portals in the process. Kate pleads with Lee to stop, mentioning how he is making things worse with his plans. She talks about the gamma ray readings, but Lee isn't interested. Nothing is going to stop him from achieving his goals now. The episode ends at the Kazakhstan base. The building starts to shake. May falls down the hole into the portal. A Titan creature then emerges from this hole and attacks Kate immediately. The monster is hit on the head by the falling debris though, disappearing back down the hole once again. Lee goes to save Kate, pulling her away from the hole, but the duo ends up falling into the portal anyway. Then the explosives are detonated. The building starts to collapse in on itself. We return to 1962 at the Monarch test site in Kansas. After Keiko's death, Bill has taken on the father role, raising Hiroshi as his own, and Lee has become Hiroshi's cool uncle. Lee says an emotional goodbye to Hiroshi before embarking on a perilous mission. He hands Hiroshi his trusty pocket knife as a parting gift. Lee's mission is titled Operation Hourglass and involves sending a craft directly into the Titan's portal, hopefully taking Lee and his crew through this tunnel to the other side. To access the portal, they need to lure a Titan into it first. This means using Dr. Suzuki's device, which awakens a Titan almost immediately. With the Titan's arrival opening the passageway, Lee's craft and Suzuki's device are then released, hurtling into the portal. This causes the portal to react strangely though, creating a swirling vortex in Kansas, which sucks in the surrounding items. The crowd of onlookers struggle to escape this powerful vortex as metal structures are dragged into it. After what feels like an eternity, the vortex abruptly stops and disappears. Thankfully, there are no casualties in Kansas, but Lee and his crew are never heard from again. Bill is unable to explain what has just happened, and the entire project is subsequently shut down. Bill can't take no for an answer though, promising to continue the search for his missing friends no matter what. General Puckett urges Bill to let it go, adding that young Hiroshi cannot lose any more precious people in his life. Hiroshi's already lost his mother and his uncle to the Titans. He can't bear to lose Bill too. How does Kentaro react to Kate's death? Meanwhile, in 2015, Kentaro wakes in a Tokyo hospital. Tim and Verdugo inform him that Kate, May, and Lee are all dead, having died in the explosion in Kazakhstan. Kentaro cannot believe it. He wants to help look for them all regardless of this information, but Verdugo orders him to stand down. His time at Monarch is now officially over. Kentaro returns home to his mother, filled with anger and regret. His mother inspires him to continue searching for his friends, though. Kentaro starts his journey by breaking into his father's office to look for clues. Here he is reunited with Hiroshi. They argue, and Kentaro breaks the news that Kate is dead. Hiroshi is devastated by this news, blaming himself for her passing. In the third subplot of Axis Mundi, viewers are taken to the other realm, the Titan's world. Lee awakens in this strange place, gawping at the beautiful colors in the sky. He must dodge deadly electrical charges to stay alive. Lee soon finds May in this forest, and together they search for Kate. Lee tells May that he has been in this world before, warning her that time works differently in this realm. The series then rewinds in time, showing audiences how Lee returned to Earth after his misadventures in the Titan's world. This narrative begins with Lee waking in a Monarch medical facility. He is interrogated about his time in the portal and the other realm, but he refuses to answer any questions until he sees Bill. They ignore his requests, and Lee goes on a hunger strike in response. Later, he takes a nurse hostage, demanding to be taken to Bill once again. What year is it when Lee exits the portal? A man informs Lee that Bill is dead, that Lee is in fact in the year 1982. Operation Hourglass took place 20 years ago. The man then shows Lee his trusty pocket knife, implying that he is Hiroshi. Lee is overwhelmed by these revelations and falls to the floor. Hiroshi speaks with Lee later, when he has finally recovered. Hiroshi asks about Lee's time in the portal, commenting on how his age defies logic. Lee hasn't aged a day since entering the portal, but 20 years have passed back on Earth. Time does indeed act differently in the Titan's realm. Lee recounts his heartbreaking story. The craft crash landed in the other realm. They buried a fallen crew member and then analyzed the crash site itself. It wasn't long before they encountered their first Titan. The monster attacked the crew, and then the portal came back to life, sweeping up Lee in the process, returning him to the other side. After retelling his crazy story, Lee admits that Bill was right. There is another world out there. Hiroshi doesn't quite believe Lee's story, though, adding that his father went mad after Lee's disappearance. He cannot be trusted. Lee is then told that he will be taken to a retirement home to be monitored and observed by Monarch for the foreseeable future. Lee pleads with Hiroshi to continue the research, to help him to understand this foreign realm, but Hiroshi isn't interested. He still traumatized by all his grief. He doesn't want anything to do with the Titans no more. Hiroshi hands Lee his pocket knife back, signifying his feelings on the matter. Next, Lee is taken to the retirement facility, where he spends the next few decades. Lee is heavily medicated and kept prisoner in this facility from the 80s all the way to the modern day. It is only the reappearance of Godzilla and the G-Day footage on his TV screen that causes Lee to fight back. From that day forward, he refuses to take any more of his medicine. Is Keiko still alive? The episode ends in the Titans realm in the present day. Kate awakens in the woods. She is attacked by a gigantic creature and attempts to crawl away from it. The creature is about to kill her when Kate is thankfully saved. An arrow hits the monster coming out of nowhere, causing it to flee. And the person who fired the arrow turns out to be Keiko. She is still alive. She has been living in the Titans realm for all this time. What a twist ending. We return to with the first meeting of Keiko and Kate. Keiko thinks that Kate is part of a rescue party that Monarch has sent though. Kate recognizes her grandmother straight away, but she doesn't have the heart to tell her the truth just yet. Keiko explains that she is the one who set up the signal, the very one that Monarch has just discovered. She believes Kate is part of a team responding to that beacon. Before Kate can tell Keiko the truth, she is reunited with May and Lee. Lee sees Keiko first and hides behind a tree. He doesn't know how to tell her about the immense time delays. Keiko has only been lost in this realm for 57 days, but she has absolutely no idea how much time has passed back in the real world. Eventually, Lee tells her the whole truth. He explains how he traveled to this realm once before and how he escaped after just a couple of weeks, returning to 1982. Lee states that he's just come from 2015. Keiko has lost many decades of her life stuck in this horrifying place. Keiko and Lee are then reunited. It's an emotional sequence as the two ex-lovers hug it out. Lee confesses that Bill is dead. Keiko breaks down after being told this heartbreaking news. Kate then tells her that Hiroshi is still alive and that she is Keiko's granddaughter. It is a lot for Keiko to comprehend. What is the purpose of Hiroshi's experiments? Back on the surface, Kentaro challenges his father Hiroshi, asking him about his odd adventures. Hiroshi admits that he has been trying to lure the Titans out of their portals to prove his parents' theory. Hiroshi asks Kentaro for his help saving the world, but Kentaro is still angry with his father and his lies. He seems incapable of helping him. Elsewhere, Tim and Verdugo are also at odds with one another. Tim wants to investigate the signal that they have received, but Verdugo is prioritizing the imminent Titan attacks instead. Tim decides to quit Monarch and walks away from his position, angered by the company's incompetence. Tim travels to Tokyo to meet with Kentaro. He wants to work with Kentaro and Hiroshi to follow this signal to hopefully save the lives of those that are trapped on the other side. Tim and Kentaro make this proposition to Hiroshi, possibly the only person who can help outside of Monarch. Meanwhile, in the other realm, Keiko takes the gang back to her campsite. She has been using Suzuki's device to send her signal back to Earth. Lee suggests using this device to help them all get back home. They then carry the device through the forests back to the crash site of Lee's original craft from the 60s. Lee is surprised to see that the craft still works, even though only a few weeks have passed since its maiden voyage. This time, delay malarkey can be quite confusing. Lee connects Suzuki's device to the craft. He plans to lure a Titan out through the rift, activating the portal once more in the process and helping them return to Earth. Keiko surprises everyone, stating that she will not be returning to Earth with them. She wants to stay behind. Keiko worries that she'll only ruin Hiroshi's life further with her shock return. She cannot go back knowing Bill is dead either. It is just too heartbreaking for her. Kate convinces her to return with them though, talking about breaking the family curse. They activate the device and prepare to leave as a group of 4. The device works, luring a Titan into the open immediately. But this winged beast was already in the Titan's realm. They have not activated the portal just yet. The winged Titan, known as the Ion Dragon, begins to attack the craft, swooping back and forth. The winged beast manages to break the connection and Lee volunteers to fix it. As he reconnects the device, Godzilla exits the portal. Godzilla and the Ion Dragon then battle one another. It's an epic fight, which ends with Godzilla tearing off one of the dragon's wings. Godzilla then hurls the beast straight into the portal. The craft starts to move, being pulled towards the portal. Lee runs after the device and grabs Keiko's hand as it starts to become airborne. Lee realizes that he must sacrifice himself for the others to escape. He lets go of Keiko's hand, saying his emotional goodbyes. The craft then enters the portal without Lee inside it. As the finale comes to an end, the craft re-emerges back on Earth. Kate, Keiko, and May are greeted by masked soldiers who usher them inside a base. They are then met by Kentaro, who doesn't appear to have aged considerably. Kentaro hugs Kate and May, marking another emotional reunion. Keiko is then reunited with her son Hiroshi, who is all grown up, and then she is introduced to her grandson, Kentaro. In the final scene, Brenda Holland emerges from the base. It's explained that Tim has been working with Apex, and Brenda's company has paid for the whole thing. Kentaro then states that 2 years have passed since their disappearance. A siren starts to sound, and the soldiers prepare for a battle. Is King Kong and Monarch Legacy of Monsters? It's then revealed that they are at Apex's Skull Island research station. Kong emerges from the forest, heading towards the base. The series ends with King Kong's haunting cry. They saved it for the final shot, but yes, King Kong does make an appearance in Monarch: Legacy of Monsters.